There are 3 new policies that every board should have. The IRS asks about these on the Form 990. If your organization has to fill out the big Form 990, every organization has to fill out one, but there's a postcard version if you don't have very much money. There's an easy version if you're in the middle, and then there's the full-blown 990. Over the next 3 years, I think by 2011 or 2012, the levels are going down drastically, so that more and more organizations are going to be swept into the great big 990, because the IRS is, because of all the shenanigans in the public and the private sector, they're just looking at governance in both private and public much more carefully. And they ask you in the 990, do you have this policy? Do you enforce it? How do you enforce it? So the policies that, the 3 policies that they ask about, in conflict of interest policy. Conflicts of interest policies confuse some people. Conflict of interest can be if there are relatives involved and they're playing a part in the role, and are you favoring Uncle Jim or Aunt so-and-so in your decision making? Are you buying services from our good friends here because we're related, instead of going and getting bids for your food, so you're paying more than you should because you're helping out your relative? That would be an example of a conflict of interest that would not be good. Just because you're related doesn't mean it's bad. It means what you have to look at is there a relationship between the individuals that involves the board making a decision about money or some other important board decision that it would not have made if you were not related. If it had gone out to a third party and gotten a fair, if you're going to sell a building, gotten a better price by going out on the market, or you're providing services to other similarly situated providers charge the same. So it's first step is, are you related? Second step is, well, okay, is there actually a material conflict that you shouldn't be doing this? These conflict of interest policies, the Form 990 asks a great deal of information about them, and they even want you to annually have people say that they read the policy and they understand it and they'll abide by it. So they want you not only to have a policy, they want you to publish it to your new staff, officers, board, and you want them to sign a little acknowledgement. I read this policy and I understand. And then you want to communicate. So if you're in a board meeting and one of you knows something about another board member and maybe that board member is not forthcoming, then that's something to think about if it is material to the decision. You might have a private conversation with the individuals and say, do you think you need to mention this? But you need to be forthcoming with each other, because depending on how your articles and bylaws are written, sometimes it voids the transaction if your articles and bylaws are written that way. So if there's a conflict and you bought a building and it turns out you bought it for too much money and you should have, the whole transaction can be voided by the nonprofit. And that's very complicated, and you just don't want to get into those situations. The second is the whistleblower policy. And this is a federal policy. It's federal law now under the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. You cannot retaliate against someone by threatening their job if they are informing a law enforcement official or someone about misdeeds. So if they're whistleblowing about bad financial practices, and that maybe you really shouldn't have your tax-exempt status because you're doing X, Y, and Z and you're making money, you can't retaliate and take their job away. So whistleblower policy is something that is required under a different law, which is the Sarbanes-Oxley law. The third is record retention and destruction, and this is a combination of legal requirements and just common sense. How often have you as a board member or you as an employee maybe been asked to find some contract and nobody can find it, nobody knows where it is, everyone's turning up the office because we just it was in so-and-so's office, but so-and-so left, where did it go? Good record-keeping practices will help you be able to say that you used good judgment, that you were prudent, and that you abided by the business judgment rules. But also, if you are sued or threatened some sort of investigation, maybe an employment matter, maybe somebody sues you because they fell down and hit their head in the bed, then you can't destroy documents. There's something called a litigation hold, and you have to stop destroying documents. You have to absolutely maintain everything so that they can do the due diligence to find out what's true. You're all familiar with Enron and Arthur Andersen, and that was one of the key things. They had a policy on document destruction. They did not follow it as a regular practice. When they found out that people were looking at them, they had a mad frenzy of destruction. That's exactly what you don't want. You can have a document retention policy. I mean, we all have them at home. How long do you keep the electric bill? Do you keep it? Where's my mortgage security deed or whatever? We all, in our own personal life, have document issues, and I'm overrun, it seems like. I'm not a good person at home, but I have a mad shredder, and like every couple of months I gather up all the shredding and I do it in this mad frenzy. But it's the same thing with your organization. There are certain things, if you have employees, you have to keep forever. There are other things you can keep 1 or 2 years depending on the law, other things 7. There's accounting rules about it, there's labor rules about it. But then you can, if you automatically do it, then you can get rid of them and it's fine. But don't ever, if you're being investigated, start getting rid of things and say, oh, I have a document policy, I can get rid of this stuff. Big red flag.